right, folks. Welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I am your host here, Mike Frank, with my good buddy Jamie Uyeyama, fresh from a great visit to South Bend for the game this past weekend. We also have our good buddy Greg Flamong, who's going to be producing the show, and he'll come on now and again and offer some thoughts as well on the game. Before we get going, man, what a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up. Man, lots going on. Lots of stuff with Notre Dame recruiting. Obviously, a big win on Saturday means Notre Dame has a shot, hopefully, to make it the playoffs as long as they continue winning. So that's going to be an exciting stretch down here these last 5 games. Hopefully, Notre Dame can go undefeated and earn a spot in the playoff, and we'll see where everything lays at that point. Also wanted to mention, if you don't follow us on YouTube, make sure you search for us. Search for Irish Sports Daily. And if you would, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and also like the content. It'll allow you to let us know allow you to know when we have new videos that are up, and you can check all that out. Also wanted to mention our first sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang and Chicago's go-to for the best custom suits, shirts, and sport coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now's the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ master tailors combine the next level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms both in downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment and receive 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. All right, Yama. First of all, I don't understand the sour face there, brother. I mean, first of all,
I'm good. I'm just ready. I'm ready to unleash.
You've got the Jays and the Mariners, who are your 2 favorite teams. I don't know how that's possible. Why don't you just pick all 26, and then you can just be assured that you're going to find a winner that way. But you've got them battling it, and it's probably not going to matter if Ohtani plays like he is right now. Who knows whether it's even going to matter? But and then you come off a great win, and then I see you looking there, and you're just kind of sour face. What's going on there, Yama?
No. That's just my resting face. What can I do? It's just how I look, Mike. What can I say? When I start talking,
you're a handsome devil. You're a handsome devil.
But, I will say it's awkward times here because my heart is with the Mariners because of growing up with them, and obviously they never won the World Series. I've never even been to the World Series, but everyone, I'm surrounded by all Jays fans naturally. And it's you never kind of realize, because I was like, it'd be nice if they both made it. But then you never kind of realize till they're in the thing together that you're like, yeah, I really don't want the Jays to win. I really want the Mariners to win. So
you just gotta cheer for who you're gonna cheer for, yeah.
Yeah, but whoever win, if Jays win, I'll root for them against the Dodgers. Although my sister, much like Greg Flamong, is a big Dodgers fan. So there's always something. There's always some kind of conflict. But I tell you, like, it was great vibes at the stadium. Obviously it's weird because of the weather and the delay and everyone going in, but it was so weird because the weather before the game was nice. Like it was a warm day and everybody's out tailgating, having a good time. I say a pretty bad showing by USC fans in general. I thought there was going to be more USC fans there, considering this might be the last time that they come out to, who knows, right? But obviously you could just tell it was a great atmosphere heading into the game. And considering all of like the weather, it could have been like pretty ugly, in terms of what, it could have meant for the atmosphere from the fans. But I got to give it up because Notre Dame Stadium, it gets a pretty bad rap. Some of it definitely earned from previous things about, not being like the most into it. But the big games, they've really, really come through. And I think that it did help the team in this game.
No doubt about it. And if you watch the post-game show that Greg and I did, I was as happy as you could possibly be. And I'm still there, bud. I'm still there. I am that excited about what I saw on Saturday. And as Greg and I kind of talked about after the show, we had hoped, Jamie, that Notre Dame would come out and their offensive line would just stick it to them. And boy, if they did. And even rewatching the game, you kind of see Notre Dame just dominated the line of scrimmage. I just think that they did a great job of dominating the line of scrimmage. And I'll say this, and I don't think enough Irish fans are giving USC enough credit for how good their team is. They should be excited about this because SC is better than a lot of people think. Obviously, defensively, they struggled against the run. There's no doubt about it. But that's a better team than a lot of people think. And they're going to win a lot of games. And Notre Dame just didn't necessarily play that well. They kept shooting themselves in the foot with some penalties and some things here and there. But just to come out and absolutely manhandle USC. And I don't know how many times I've said it over and over. You win this game by dominating the line of scrimmage. You pound them, you punch them in the mouth. Notre Dame did that. But I think the biggest surprise, it was hard to say which was a bigger surprise, was Notre Dame's ability to dominate in the run game or Notre Dame's ability to just shut down their run. They got a couple big yardage things, not big yardage, but, 10, 12 yards that padded their rushing stats, based off of third down runs and stuff like that, third and 25 and things like that, where they're trying to trick you a little bit. But when it came down to USC just trying to run the ball, without Gabe Rubio in there, man, you want to talk about guys who stepped up, Dawson, Anye, Anthony or Elijah Hughes, those guys and the ends, all those guys, just tremendous job. And I thought the linebackers did a great job as well. Your thoughts on line play, both sides?
The defensive line probably not getting talked about enough because of obviously the big rushing yard numbers, but they were fantastic in the game. And I'm 100% with you. Like the defensive tackles were great. And you come into the game, you don't have Gabe Rubio, and he's been their best defensive tackle all year. And really, Jason Anye has not had a good year. Like he's not had the kind of year that people expected him. This was his best game that he's played at Notre Dame. Not even close. Yeah. Not even close. He really, really stepped up. Like he looked like the same kind of pass rusher that he was like before, he had to leave the team last year. He was great against the run all game long. Dawson was fantastic too. Hughes, those guys were really, really good playing at a high level. And I think too, the pass rush was great too. They really, really did a great job. And I thought, Notre Dame's linebacker play was exceptional as well. Those guys were obviously all over versus the screen game. That was a part that probably didn't get talked about enough. I would say that Todd Blackledge, because after rewatching the TV copy, I'm not watching it when you're in the press box, you don't hear what he's saying, but he does a really good job of prep and stuff, and he's on top of stuff because he was thinking all of these things that I was thinking during the game, where he was talking about their screen game, this and that, these things that were super important for them. And before the game, I thought that was going to be a big key because they had just killed teams with screen. And remember last season, that was something where they really did. It was everyone talked about the deep ball. They threw the deep ball. It was a screen game where they got a bunch of big plays. And this game, they were 39 of 40. Maeva was 39 of 40 throwing screens. They averaged 10 yards per attempt on screens coming into the game. That's insane. Did 17 first downs, more first downs on screens than anybody. And in this game, 4 of 6 in the screen game, 4.7 yards per attempt. They only got 1 first down. They threw the one to the back Jackson, where it hit on a second and long. That was it. That was the only one that really kind of went for anything. There was so much, and think of how many of those plays were where they were trying to leak a guy out in the flat, and Drake Bowen was all over it, or KVA on the play that was the big play action play where they're trying to hit the tight end. They're trying to hit a touchdown play, right? On the thing where they're thinking they're going to run a sneak. And he comes back, spins back, and is like on top of it. And Schuler was in there too and would have had coverage, but he would have had a throw. He would have had a chance to at least make a play there. And KVA kind of took it away. He was basically double teamed. And, as Greg pointed out on Twitter too, props to Snead for like running that down as well. But they were just so on top of everything. You could tell that they did the coaching staff. You got to give huge props to the coaching staff.
Yes.
They did such a great job in prepping them for this game. And they were just so aware. Like you could see where Notre Dame saw runs and like the backers, like Osbury, didn't get talked about enough in the game. He played really well too, because he was playing downhill. Because when he saw like counter, it was trigger and he was go. And then there was all that. They just had so many guys winning. Like USC couldn't block them. They couldn't block. They couldn't block the backers at second level. They couldn't block, Notre Dame up front, and that was just huge. And then on the other side, obviously, like they did like a great job. Like USC wasn't winning one-on-one matchups at all, but I do have to give a ton of props to Mike Denbrock and Joe Rudolph for what they did in this game in terms of like schematically.
Yes.
I mean, some of it, was set up well because USC was obviously deathly afraid of putting their corners on an island. And that's why they played too high for much of the game, a large percentage of the game. But if you watch it, what Notre Dame was doing with the tight ends in this game and all the different things they did with it, and, formationally what they did with it, what they did with some of like bringing in a receiver to lead block.
Yes,
so they would, one time that, one play they'd run double ISO with those guys. And they obviously got a big conversion on 4th and 1 there. Next time they'd run just straight up duo where it looks like it's, this is going to be split zone, but it's not. And they just kept messing with the reads of the backers and safeties. And that's why those guys weren't downhill and they weren't like able to make plays. And so many of those plays where, Love and Price broke it, you can see that backside safety, he's going with the tight end. And he's thinking they were so keying on that tight end, and that is what opened up so many of those plays. I will say too, like USC, I think Danton Lynn does a good job. Obviously, overall, he's obviously improved the defense from what they were, but man, there's so many times where they are down a gap up front, and that was the thing last year with them too. Because you can maybe get away with that guy if you have guys who could two gap, like the interior guy, but they don't have those guys. And that really just cost them. That really cost them.
I think you bring up a very good point about, and this was, if you remember last week, you, Greg, and I were talking about, maybe they're saving some of this for SC, and there was so many different ways that they blocked things up. Yeah, it is exactly what they were doing. They blocked it up so many different ways that it was hard for SC to know where it was coming from. And it really was a great performance coaching-wise by Notre Dame, especially defensively. That's not an easy team to defend. That's just not. And it's like Notre Dame knew what they were going to try and do, and they were ready for it almost every single time. Now, did they tackle well all the time? Did they? Not always, but that's just part of football. But just the recognition and knowing what they're seeing and reacting to it is what tells you there was some damn good preparation in this. There was some good preparation by the Notre Dame coaching staff defensively and offensively, and that's very, very exciting. Now, the one thing, and we want to bring our good buddy Greg Flamong on here, and I got to ask you too, and I mentioned it in my commentary. Look, we can talk about whether red zone offense is schematic. We can talk about whether or not it's execution. We can talk about all that stuff, and I think it's probably a little bit of both. But I think the most important thing is Mike Denbrock and the offense have to take this opportunity this week to realize this is not working. We're not executing So, whether you want to blame it on the players not executing, well, then you're not teaching them well enough how to execute it. And it's on you, coaching staff, because you're trying to do so much of the same things and it's just not ever working. So to me, I think it's important that this offensive staff, everything else is looking good. CJ Carr is going to play a lot better than he did on Saturday. And when that happens, wow, and you can run like this, Notre Dame's going to be very difficult to beat. But there's going to be often times where they're going to be, first and 10 at the 18-yard line. And that's when Notre Dame throws themselves in jail so much. We've watched the back and forth. We've watched the games. We've watched the results. What do you see as the problem? We'll start with you, Greg. What do you see as the problem down here? How can they fix this?
In terms of the red zone?
Yes. I mean, what do you think? Is it scheme? Is it execution? How can they be more effective? Because you have great playmakers. And as I talked about on the post game, I think what also kind of hurts you a little bit in defense for Denbrock is Carr has not been great, throwing fades and things like that down in the red zone. He's been good at times, especially the inside slants. He's done a really good job with that. But a lot of the routes that you would normally run down there, whether the route is not good or the throw is not good, it just hasn't been very effective. And as I mentioned in the postgame show, Denbrock's got kind of a bad situation too, where you've got two of the best running backs in the entire country, and if you call pass play and it's incomplete, then everybody's going to yell at you because why are you even trying to throw when you got the two best running backs? But then, sure enough, you put those running backs in there, and it's second and goal from the 3, and they can't get in. So I mean, let's again, Greg, start with you, but that's kind of where I think Denbrock's at with it. It's like your quarterback has to execute if you're going to throw the ball, and not do stupid things like he did, in the interception, which obviously scares you. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, if you're not getting it in with your running backs, what do you do? So start with you, Greg.
So you make a good point. Like he's thrown a few fades to fields that are just like not catchable, right? So that's just been an issue. And I want to kind of get Jamie's thoughts on this too, because I feel like there's been a few times where Denbrock has just kind of guessed wrong. Like he's thought, oh, I'm going to get this, and he's gotten something else, and that has ruined the play. And I think it's exacerbated by the fact that then CJ has made poor decisions when the play is blown up. It's like sometimes you got to just give up, man. Like you're running around back there, and look, he got rewarded for it against Miami when he threw the touchdown pass to Mikey Gilbert. He's running all around. He found an open player, and so he got rewarded for that. And now he wants to continue to do that. So I think that's part of it too. The other part is, we saw them in the fourth quarter just say, okay, we're running quarterback counter. We're running quarterback power, and we're going to run the ball in. And then they were successful twice. Like they got the ball in the 5, they ran it to the 4, and then they ran in the end zone, right? I think they've been reticent to do that. I don't think they want to do that. And I think in their minds, that is the solution. And it's like he just doesn't want to. And that's understandable, right? Like why give Carr more hits than you need? Another part too is that with the running game, USC's sitting in too high. Well, at the goal line and in the red zone, they're not really going to do that because the field is condensed, right? So those safeties come down, and now they're a factor. And so that's been part of it too. So I think it's almost like the 22 year when Al Golden was so bad in the red zone, and it's just like they were literally the worst team in the country with that, and there was no real rhyme or reason for it other than like things, like specific things to specific moments that continued to add to failures for them. I think that's what it is. Like I just think in another year, like this won't be a problem. Right? It could very easily just go away. I just think they need to get into better things, and they need to be able to be willing to say like, okay, if it's 3rd and short or 4th and short, we can run quarterback power, and we're going to run it in for that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I got a comment because I see a lot of Irish fans keep saying, put in Buckner. And nothing against Buckner, but Buckner has never been a good zone read quarterback. He just hasn't been. He just has never had a great feel for it. So now, if you're going to run quarterback power with him, okay, fine, yeah, right?
Yeah, quarterback power is. I think that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. But I think part of the problem is because you are so reliant on, and to Greg's point here, I think Denbrock guessed wrong, like what Greg is trying to say when he faked it to the running back and then tried to boot out and thought he'd have an easy play there, and he guessed wrong, and they were ready for that. But because CJ never pulls it and is a running threat, you're like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about this. This defensive end doesn't have to worry about this quarterback taking the ball the other way. He crashes down on the running back every single time. Both ends do, because they're not worried about it. So to me, I think if you're going to put a quarterback in there, you got to have the zone read threat in there too. I think that's important if you're going to do that. Now, quarterback power, I think, is good too. But you can't do that every time. You don't have Riley Leonard, and Tyler Buckner's not 6'5" and 225, 30 pounds. Plus, he hasn't really played much, lately either. So, not that Minchie has either, but I don't know. To me, it seems like there's never any real misdirection. There's really nothing for anybody to sit there and go, oh boy, I better be concerned about this going this way. And that, to me, I think is the biggest problem. It seems like every time they would try and run the ball, all right, it's either going behind Strouth or it's going behind Gerby, one of the two, and that's what we're going to do. And teams know that. And there's just nothing on the perimeter that is giving them any sort of pause to not just come crashing down right away. Your thoughts here, Yama?
Yeah, I actually think that's a great point, Mike, because I'll get to that in a second, but Greg, I agree that a lot of the stuff with Denbrock has him been guessing wrong. I've been thinking, we're going to get this. Play action here. And it's like never hit. It's not like none of that has worked this year, where it was last year. But I think part of that was because there was, which kind of leads into what you're saying, Mike, was Riley Leonard presented all these different problems. It was like, well, they can run zone read here. One, they can run quarterback power here. They roll him out. He might get the corner here. He could just run through a linebacker here. Yes. That is such a weapon to have. And when you don't have that, because what we've seen, Carr's a good athlete. He's not beating anyone in the corner. Not these athletes that they're playing, against most teams. He's not beating anyone in the corner. And he's also not going to run through anybody either. So, yeah, you can run the quarterback power, but it's like you can see the difference between him running quarterback. He got in because they ran it so well, like they blocked it so well, right? It's not like, Leonard could get hit at the 2 and find a way to score still, right? And when you don't have that, that's tough. And then that is, where, maybe you do want to have somebody else to do it, like how NC State has their guy that comes in and does that, and maybe that's Buckner, maybe it's Minchie, whatever, but that person still doesn't have all the things that Leonard has. So it does present something. But I totally agree, Mike, with the thing of like, they're not making them think enough, because that is death to a defense when you're like, I've never seen this formation before. What are we doing here? Like, they're running this. Price and Love are on the field at the same time. Like, that's where you kind of bring that stuff out. It should actually be a red zone package where those guys are on there at the same time, because immediately you're thinking like, okay, what are they doing here? Okay, they started in the backfield. Love is out wide here. And they have to run around and figure it out and all that. And it's basically exactly what Penn State did to Notre Dame last year when they played in the red zone. And it was like they were pretty much automatic, except for Allard sucked and missed the wide open Singleton play. But they just did all these different things where they were like, well, we're going to run Katron Allen here is going to be the lineup one, and we're going to run jet sweep with him. Now we're going to start in the backfield. Singleton's going to motion out. We're going to throw it to him in the flat. All of these little different things, wrinkles that were like, they didn't run any of that before. And obviously you can't just do that every game, but it's almost like I think they got to do more. And obviously it's more work. It's more work for everyone, right? But you need to have more of a package there, like for just specific weeks, just to have that success, because it's obvious you can't just go out and execute just like you did with Leonard, where you can just like, well, we have our standard stuff and we can run it and we're going to score we're going to score 80 to 90% of the time. We're getting touchdowns here. They don't have that anymore. And then obviously too, in a game like this where Carr isn't as on, because you look at that play, like they scored right after it where, Love's his first touchdown, or I think it was that, or maybe it was the Price touchdown. But anyways, they scored on a touchdown right after, but they ran a little sprint out and Pauling was open and it was just like a flat out miss. Like it was just a bad throw. And I mean, obviously he missed Raritan on one. There are just things like that really hurt them, that you just expect him to make those throws, and that makes stuff easier, with some of that other things that you didn't see in other games where I don't know if you're going to see. I doubt you're going to see that very much from Carr the rest of the way. But there has to be more too, because if I always look at like Andy Reid and what he does, and obviously Andy Reid is, one of the best play callers of all time. He's incredible, sure. But the Chiefs cannot, like they're not a team that can power it into the end zone. Like they're not, but they have so much window dressing with what they do that allows them to score there. And when they have all their weapons and what they can do there. And that is just something that's like, there's too many weapons for Notre Dame not to make it easier there. And they should just have like, okay, every week, 4 red zone plays that are like your plays that are just specific stuff that's just for the red zone. And I mean, that's tough because you're adding in more than you're already doing, but it's like, you almost kind of have to, because they're reached a point where it might not, against BC, they shouldn't have a problem against BC. I mean, if it is a problem against BC, then yeah, that is very concerning. But when you get into these games, you're going to play at Pitt, and Pitt's got a pretty good defense. You don't want to be in a situation where you're leaving points off the board, like they just have consistently done.
They've been doing it in every game.
Yeah, and it's really, and it's happened enough now that you just know that it's like, it's not an anomaly. This is who they are at this moment. Kind of like how we know with the defense, where it's like, well, they've turned a corner. This is who the defense is. This defense is very good again. Like there's no doubt. So that's just where it is. You have to find ways to fix it. That the one good thing I would say that every single time last year when they had a bye week, like they had the 2 mid-season bye weeks, I thought the offense took big jumps after each one of those things where it was like, man, they can't throw on first down. All of a sudden, come out against Georgia Tech and boom, they're just like dialing it up, doing whatever they want on first down. And so I have pretty good trust that like Dan Brock and the offensive staff is going to have a pretty good plan coming out of this.
That's the thing. And I think you bring it up. A lot of people think, because I saw a lot of people, let's run a jet sweep. Let's throw more fades. Let's do this. Let's do that. There's just not enough time to practice all that, right? And so now is the time that you get a chance to practice that. But when you're going into the game, like Mike Denbrock has his plays already by Tuesday. He knows what they're going to do by Tuesday. So you have to practice those, and the time to practice more of the red zone stuff and figure out what you can do was fall camp and spring, right? That it's not during the season. That's not where you get the chance to really add a whole lot of plays and different things that you look at. But you mentioned the Penn State thing, and I agree. A lot of times they line up in that kind of T formation where both backs are split, and hey, those guys could go either way, right? You could take Allen one way, you can take the other guy the other way, and then next thing you know, you're putting a lot of stress on that defense because the safety over here is worried. The corners over here is worried about, man, what if they run to my side? I got to make sure I get off this block. All these things get in the back of somebody's head. And so I got to believe that Denbrock will fix it this week. I just think it's been a problem finding time, because you're trying to solve some of your other problems as well. So just having enough time this week, he'll have the opportunity to do that. And I think we'll see a better thing moving forward. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, just last thing on this. I feel like it's funny how some years there's this constant like there's a theme behind it. Like I remember last year the concept of self-scouting was like I feel like we talked about it every week last year.
Yeah,
and
it was brought up a lot. Yeah.
And now that it hasn't been at all this year. And now that we're coming up on the bye, it's like that's when you get like the self-scouting thing. And it's like, okay, this is what we're getting from the defense consistently. This is what we are doing. Let's take out the bad stuff. Let's keep the good stuff. And then you can kind of go from there. And it's like you guys said, like I feel like the offense is in a place now, to Mike's point, like the offense is in a place where, okay, we can focus in on this particular thing because they figured out kind of all the other big picture stuff. And plus you have an opponent that you should be able to take a week and say, we're going to work on this specific aspect of what we're trying to do. And it's important to do that. And you know, like if you're trying to hone like your pickleball game or something like that, Mike, then you want to find like a week or a clinic when it's like, I can work on something specific with a professional. And you can do that actually with H2 pickleball, if that's what you're into. And you can do that at the H2 pickleball clinic that's taking place Friday before the Syracuse game. You could do that with Notre Dame fans. You can talk about where Notre Dame's red zone situation is at that point. And if you're interested in that, you can go to H2 Pickleball. Of course, that's founded by Notre Dame alum Todd Hill. He's teaming with fellow alums Jack Gibbs and Will Howells, who's a top 10 pickleball pro, to bring Notre Dame fans to Notre Dame Pickleball Crew League. Besides football, what better way to connect and engage Notre Dame fans than through pickleball? Membership is free, and members will have access to special pickleball events and discounts. I talked about the Will House Pickleball Clinic that'll take place Friday before the Syracuse game. If you go to that, you can get a discounted ticket to the Syracuse game, which is the last home game of the season. Contact Todd at h2pickleball.com or call him at 574-339-5195 to join the league. Be sure to visit the H2 Pickleball facility in Mishawaka when you are in town. H2 Pickleball is located at 55801 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka, Indiana.
The Monger. he does a great job with that. It's awesome.
No one's better.
No, there really isn't anybody better than that. All right, well, guys, last thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to hopefully, I assume we're going to get Christian on. We want to talk some recruiting. So, but the last thing I wanted to talk about is, Notre Dame's got a special coach. They have a special coach, and it has been a joy to watch this. And I say the best thing about having Marcus Freeman as a head coach is that you always know you have a chance, right? So many times in previous coaching tenures, I'd never thought Notre Dame had a chance to beat some of these teams. I don't care who Notre Dame plays. It almost always comes down to the wire if they lose. It's always a point or two if they lose. And Notre Dame shows up and ready to play in these big games. And when you have that, you got something special. And now recruits are taking notice. Like I said, we'll have Christian on to talk about the weekend. It was a huge recruiting weekend for Notre Dame. But, I mean, I'm just telling you, when you look across college football and you look at all the coaches out there, I wouldn't trade Marcus Freeman for any of them. Not Kirby, nobody. Not DeBoer, nobody. I literally would not trade Marcus Freeman for any other coach because I don't think any other coach could be as successful at Notre Dame as Marcus Freeman is. I really don't, because I think he has the right mentality, the right image, the right understanding of what Notre Dame is, also willing to work within the rules and represent Notre Dame in a very positive way. And I can't stress enough how special I think Marcus Freeman is. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people coming after him. I'm sure he's gotten calls from Penn State. I'm sure Florida's on the phone, or at least his agent, I should say. I'm sure there are teams that are trying to get him. The NFL, I'm sure, will be like, hey, how do we get into the Marcus Freeman game? And a lot of people are worried about Notre Dame losing him. And of course, that's always a concern. You're always concerned about that. But I will say this: I think Notre Dame is committed to winning, and I think they also know they have a special coach. And what they have done is they've committed a lot of money, a lot of resources to this program being successful. And yes, some people may come after Marcus Freeman, but I really don't think Notre Dame is dumb enough to let him go. They're going to give him whatever he wants, whatever he needs, because it has been 40 years, it seems like, since Notre Dame has been in this position. And you cannot screw this up. And I just want to say, I don't think Notre Dame will screw it up. I know they'll do the right thing. But I also think Marcus Freeman really likes being the Notre Dame head football coach. And I think it's a perfect match. And I think Notre Dame caught lightning in a bottle, and this thing's just going to get better and better. And it's just so much fun to have a coach that you really get behind. You really want the guy to do well. And I think every Notre Dame fan, even the most pessimistic at this point, has to be saying, man, we're in such great position right now. And I really believe Notre Dame, everybody in college football is scared of what Notre Dame's about to become. They really are. I guarantee you they are. Because when Notre Dame can get a special guy like this and just the kind of hype and tradition and the things that they've had, and it's a great story, teams are concerned. They're concerned about where Notre Dame is headed, and so are their fans, and it's just a beautiful thing. That's my last comment about this. Your thoughts, Yama?
I couldn't agree more, Mike. And I think that where the job is a really good job. I mean, Notre Dame is always a good job, but the thing is that what he's done, and Brian Kelly made it a better job. He definitely made it a better job.
He did, yes.
But Marcus Freeman has made the job so much more attractive because of what he's done. And part of the reason that he's been given the resources and that they're willing to say, hey, yes, let's do this and whatever. And part of the reason, like I agree, they would never let him go without putting every single thing into it. He's got to want to leave if that's the thing. But the thing is that with all these jobs, if you would have said years ago, well, Florida is opening up. Well, Florida State is probably going to open up and this and that. And Penn State, at a time, those used to be better jobs than Notre Dame at certain points.
Yes.
I don't know about Penn State. I don't know about Penn State ever, but Florida, at the time when Urban Meyer took that job, yes, it was a better job. And that was tough for Notre Dame fans to swallow, but it's true. It is not a better job anymore. At this moment, it is not. Now, Marcus Freeman and someone like that could go there and maybe turn it into something, but why would he leave this situation for that situation? Would make no sense unless he just hated it here, which he clearly doesn't. And he's just it's really hard to be liked by just about everybody.
Yeah.
And I think if you ask Notre Dame fans, people who work at Notre Dame, players, coaches, parents, whatever, there aren't people who are like, man, if someone said, I hate Marcus Freeman, you'd be like, what?
Really?
College football in general. If someone said that, you'd be like, what? Like, it would be like if someone said, Mike, you're like, I don't like the Beatles. What? Like, it would blow people's minds. You know what I mean? Because they're kind of like a universally beloved band, right? So he kind of has universal approval, which is so weird for a Notre Dame coach because Brian Kelly had like the opposite vibe of that. And which is also too, he's a perfect example, just like Bill Belichick now. I mean, none of this stuff would be coming out with all the drama around it if he was still winning, because they'd be like, yeah, we can't stand the guy. He's not a nice guy, but what can you say? He's the winningest coach. They win all that. People overlook stuff when people win if they're not nice. But when you're a good guy and people want to root for you, and you bring all this other stuff to the table too, it's pretty great for Notre Dame fans to root for a guy like that.
I got one comment, and then Greg. My one comment is, I don't know how many times I've had fans from other programs, just I'll be talking about, they ask me what I do for my job and all this type of stuff here in Nebraska. And they're like, man, I really like your coach. I think he's a really good guy. I don't know how many people have told me that.
Yeah.
How many? Just tons of people have said that to me. And I'm like, he's a Notre Dame coach. How can you say that? You guys hate Notre Dame.
No, I hate Notre Dame, but I like Marcus Freeman.
That coach.
I've heard that a lot from people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm just telling you that when you get that, man, it's awesome. Go ahead, Greg.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. And that's true. I think, though, it's not as relevant what we think about Marcus Freeman. It's relevant to what the recruits and the players think about Marcus Freeman. And what better person to ask about how the recruits feel about Marcus Freeman than our consigliere, Christian McCollum, ready to talk, give us the knowledge of the recruiting weekend. It was a huge recruiting weekend. There's a lot of buzz. And Christian is here to inform us. Christian, you hear us?
Look at that handsome guy there.
Look at him.
We got to get this guy on more. Maybe that's the problem. I'm the ugly guy, and then I got these three other really handsome guys, and I just kind of bring it down. People don't want to watch it because of me. But all right.
So Christian, you've heard us having this conversation. What are the thoughts of the players? Not just there's a bunch of 2026 recruits commitments at the game as well, and then you got some 2027 guys. What's the vibe on Marcus Freeman and how people feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, it's what you would think it is, right? Like, it's been the vibe on Marcus Freeman for quite a while now. All the respect he's earned coming out of the gate, even when he first took the job, just by his personality and his leadership, all that stuff was just kind of buoyed and strengthened with last season, right? So that's his impression on people right now is almost cemented, at least for now, in terms of a winner, right? Just last year did that for him. And now the two kind of just go together. Recruits, parents, coaches, they've all just been blown away by Marcus Freeman's leadership and his personality, his charisma the entire time. And this weekend was no different.
The thing, Christian, when you read these, and you've been doing this a long time, not quite as long as me, but you've been dealing with these recruits for a very, very long time. And when I hear conversations with you and Matt, who handle our recruiting parts of Irish Sports Daily, and then when I read the comments, the thing that stands out the most to me, and it just was never said by the other previous coaches, culture, right? Brotherhood, just, and then I think Notre Dame has done a much better job, because I see it more and more about opportunities after football. That's always been a selling point, but you see it almost in every single thing. And more importantly, Christian, it's the players' parents who are saying this. That's what's exciting. The players themselves repeat it, but the parents are saying it and saying, man, they have this network stuff down, and they will set you up long after football is over. Those three things, I think, are really resonating and hitting home. And then also the fourth thing that I've seen that I never saw, especially under a lot of those coaches, is the word development. That was never said. And I read that a lot. They talk about development. This coach knows how to develop me. Look what he's done with X and Y and Z, and to me, when you have recruits talking about those four things, you're doing the job. And so this weekend was huge. Obviously, there's a lot of big time guys. I know you've spoken with most of them. How do you think? I mean, let's talk about some of these guys. How do you think they did?
Yeah, so I know one big name that's been out there is former Penn State running back Keemon Spell. Everything we've heard about his visit, it went extremely well. He decommitted from Penn State just days before making the trip, although that decision seemed to be in the works for quite a while. James Franklin's firing just kind of accelerated that, and Spell had some pretty interesting comments about Penn State in general, saying that was going that way anyways. But everything we heard, it went very well. I know people have been hinting at a commitment. I'm not sure that's taken place yet. And I'm not sure. I think everyone on both sides wants to make sure they're completely sure before they move forward with that. Another guy that we had our eyes on closely was 2027 Pennsylvania offensive lineman James Halter, son of Jordan Halter, former Notre Dame offensive lineman. He camped at Notre Dame in June, didn't get offered at the time, which I thought was kind of interesting. He went to Ohio State and Penn State, picked up offers then. But Notre Dame made it clear that the kid had been playing tight end, kind of a glorified, third tackle, but really tight end until this season. And Notre Dame basically said they just want to see a couple game films this season. Jamie and I looked at some of that game film, and I know Jamie was very impressed. So he came up for the A&M game, and he got offered. And then the fact, this is a kid like his dad, like I said, Jordan Halter, he really, you speak about development, Mike, his dad is really big into developing the kid. So they're not out there crisscrossing the country every weekend, taking away from opportunities for this kid to develop. So they weren't making very many visits. So he came back this weekend for Notre Dame, which was telling, and he was back in Pennsylvania for a noon practice yesterday. So that's a pretty big one. Jamie, your thoughts? I know we've talked about James before. Tell everyone what you think of him so far.
Yeah, I remember, looking at his film before he came up for Invasion, because, you're looking at the guys who might get offered, before that camp. And and obviously I was looking at it's like numbers and just how he moved. And I just thought, oh, he's a guy that, had a real chance. And I watched him at the camp, and I could see why he didn't get offered that day and why they wanted to see more, because you could tell, like, he was completely like, everything was like brand new for him. Like he was, like they were basically teaching him how to walk. Like every little thing in terms of technique and stuff in pass pro was so new to him. But you also saw like he competed his butt off, and he was like getting better throughout the camp. Unfortunately, that was that Jackson Vaughn was just destroying like everyone he went against. So it was like that was a tough look for everybody going against him. But you could see Halter had a real chance, and I loved his frame. He was super long and a good athlete. So I was kind of like, well, he's a guy to watch. And then obviously you sent me, his film early this year, and I think he's made a huge jump. Like he looks like a dude to me. And what I would compare it to is like, in terms of where he's seen right now, I don't think he's like Will Black, like at that level of a prospect. But in terms of like where, he's seen like now, like I think he's like a low 4-star kid, but he's someone I think has a chance to be like a top 100 level kid before it is all said and done. And and it's another one of these guys, kind of like similar to Grayson McKeel, right? Where you could just see like, these are the kind of guys that you want to go after, where it's like, you're identifying them as sophomores. He's 260 pounds as a sophomore, but you can see he is going to be 300 or 290 or whatever. Matty Augustine, same kind of thing, where you can just see it is so obvious that he is going to be this thing. And you also see the athlete he is, and he is mean. Like he is legit mean and finishes guys. So he has all of that kind of stuff there. I think he's got a chance to be like a really, really good player.
So they have a tremendous shot with him coming out of the weekend. Really, really good chance at him.
Let me add something here. First, because I understand you're like, he's a tight end. It's not like he has Joe Alt's dad there coaching him, trying to get him ready. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, it's not like he has an idiot out there coaching him either. You know what I mean? This guy obviously knows some football too. But I mean, Joe Alt's dad was a almost Hall of Fame, left tackle. So it is a little bit different. But don't get me wrong. I'm no disrespect to Jordan Halter. I mean, that guy was a great player. But nastiness. Man, this kid wants to hurt people, and very good athlete. And you can tell he's undersized, but he's going to have the frame to get big enough. But man, this guy's like way after the whistle on every block. And I'm like, I want him. Yes. That's the kind of mean streak you got to start getting with these players, and they're getting them. So I'm not disrespecting anybody. They're getting guys with a nasty streak. But if you're going to take a chance on somebody, I want to take a chance on somebody who plays that hard and that mean versus somebody who's just a great athlete. And, and of course you got a legacy, and that's worked out pretty well for Notre Dame. But go ahead, Chris.
Well, and you'll like this, Mike. I mean, he's being basically channeled Joe Moore philosophies nonstop, right?
Yes,
Everything Joe
as it
Moore
should be.
fed into this kid, yeah. So, also they had Ace Austin, the elite corner from Ohio, similar situation where he came for the A&M game. Notre Dame actually tried to get him right back for like the Purdue game, and they were actually considering it, which said a lot to me that they were considering it. But then, I found out more, like Marcus Freeman, Mike Mickens, all these coaches have been on him, his family, talking to him, getting him back here, showing him that he's a priority. That's what you're going to have to do when you want to go to Ohio and beat Ohio State for guys. And they've been doing that, right? So he's a top level kid, and I think they're in a great position with him. Marcus Fakatu, 28, California defensive lineman, big time guy that they've offered. I think there's still a lot of things up in the air with his recruitment, but Notre Dame's in a great spot. And he told me whenever he does want to take official visits, Notre Dame's probably going to be the first place he goes. I think they're in a very good spot for him. You got a kid like Virginia defensive lineman Chris Whitehead. He's been on campus multiple times already. Came back again, was very impressed. There's a couple, other kind of offensive linemen. I know 27 Ohio offensive lineman Kellen Weimer. He's got an Ohio State offer, and he's an Ohio kid. So I think a lot of people just assume the Buckeyes would be hard to beat. But you're talking about a kid whose dad goes to one game every year, spring game every year at Notre Dame, makes it a whole deal, right? They go to the spring game, baseball game while they're there, diehard Notre Dame fans. And I know his dad didn't really want to pump up the game too much to him and hype it up. And, he knew that would be a real atmosphere for Kellen to see for the first time. You got guys like Kentucky tight end Seneca Driver, Tony Driver's nephew, has been up multiple times already. Really wanted to see the atmosphere. One thing he wanted to see was, how the tight ends are used in the game. Of course, the way the game went, that really wasn't, a highlight for those guys, just because Notre Dame's running attack just really carried the day. So that was good. Overall, like, the weather did put a little bit of a damper on things. The player walk was canceled, obviously. Kids weren't able to get down to the field for warm-ups. A lot of times that's when they get like those interactions with the coaches. So that didn't occur. But they got to see a win, and they got to go into the locker room afterwards. So they had a lot more interaction with the coaches afterwards, which I thought was great. And the one thing that really struck me, going into the visit, I was told Notre Dame really wanted to hammer home the idea of a rivalry, how important rivalries are for the program, especially being independent. And I swear, like, every kid I've talked to talked about that. And Notre Dame was very comfortable. You talked about culture, Mike. Notre Dame was very comfortable in kind of encouraging the recruits. Compare our culture to what they see on the other sideline, right? And they were comfortable with that comparison. And there was a lot of kids from the West Coast and even kids from all around the country that USC's recruiting that commented on that as well. So, and you talked about the culture, development, Marcus Freeman, off the field, long-term. All those things go together these days. And one thing I will give parents credit for these days, youth parents, there's not a lot to give them credit for as a whole, myself included at times. But, over the years, I've noticed a shift, right? Like the parents of these kids are dreaming of the NFL, right? But that's not their priority anymore for the most part. They realize the NFL is a slim shot no matter how high you are. And they're all realizing, let's use this to get something secure. Let's use it to get a good degree. And once you do that as your baseline, now you're looking at Notre Dame like, man, that's not only just a great degree. You're going to be really set up with the alumni base, all that stuff. And, you're going to be in a good culture where there's similar people that are trying to do the same thing with you. You're going to have a guy we trust to lead that in Marcus Freeman and the guys that he brings in as his assistants. And overall, they're going to give you a good chance to be developed to go to the next level if that, comes about. So all those things work together. And Notre Dame is really, hitting the ball out of the park right now with that.
I think too, the other thing is, with Notre Dame's coaches is that, and I've had, I don't know, I can't even tell you how many coaches have told me this over the years. The thing that's most attractive about coaching at Notre Dame, it's tradition. Yeah, it's all the other stuff. But what they enjoy more than anything is the actual players they get to recruit and the type of kids and coach, the type of kids and players they get to coach. And that's a big thing. And I think you're getting a lot of these players and parents and things like that. They're really starting to see this culture and that it's different. And here's the thing. I think Notre Dame has done a really good job. It's going to get harder and harder as this NIL stuff continues to explode, by keeping the culture together and not having the selfishness that I think is going to pop up at other places, certainly a lot sooner than it will at Notre Dame. But Notre Dame's done a really good job of, give you an example. Like, we know that Jeremiah Love probably could make more money somewhere else, but he's willing to say, you know what, give some of my money to J.D. Price and give it to some of these other guys. When you get unselfish people like that, that's what the culture is, right? They're like, it's more important to me to win a national championship than it is for me to have another $100,000, right? I mean, that's really what the types of decisions some of these guys are making. And I think it's really important. I've seen some comments with David Jacobs' dad, and look, I mean, when you look at David Jacobs Jr. and his son Dawson, I mean, obviously he's a big time recruit. David Jacobs Sr. was a big time recruit. I remember talking to him. He was very interested in Notre Dame, but of course Notre Dame wasn't quite as good at the time when he was coming. He was a very nice guy, smart guy. And I think he understands what Notre Dame is. And now when he gets around, like a lot of these players, parents that were former NFL players and they have that knowledge of what it means, right? They've been through it. They understand what the NFL is. They understand that it means not for long. They understand that because I'm sure all of them struggled too. I don't know how many former players have told me that the hardest thing that they had to deal with is when it's over. What do I do? You got a degree. You're thinking, all right, but then you realize I've got 45, 50 years to live after this. I got to figure out what to do. And so these guys, whether their NFL career was great or it was mediocre or it was very short, they all are in the same situation at the end, which is, what am I going to do with my life now that it's over? Yeah, if I have a bunch of money, that's great, but I want to make sure I still have a bunch of money through the next 40 years. And I'd also like to set up my kids so they don't have to struggle as much as I did. So they all understand this. And I think that's why it's resonating so much with these former NFL players and former players that didn't even come to Notre Dame. They went somewhere else. And then all of a sudden their kids are recruited by Notre Dame and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. But that's kind of like, Cedric Irvin's sons, you would think after the last situation, they'd be like, I don't know whether I should go to, consider Notre Dame because of what happened to the last one. But I think he understands that this is a different world out here and you need to take advantage of whatever opportunities you can. And so I figure that that's going to be a big selling point. As long as Notre Dame continues to play like they do, they're going to have a great chance to land many of these elite guys. The key is going to be, how do you keep everybody happy? And it's interesting because Matt always talks about, Keemon Spell, and it's like, I like Keemon Spell. I think he's a great player. There's no doubt about it. But how do you keep all these backs both happy and pay them? How do you pay all these guys? And everybody thinks, well, it's an unlimited check. And it's like, no, that's not how that works anymore. It did work like that, but it doesn't work like that anymore. So now there's a real budget that you're going to have to deal with. And so, you look at all the guys that seem to be interested, and it's like, yeah, I'd love to have that guy, but we just paid this guy this much, and so I can't have that guy. So it's going to be a balancing thing and trying to figure out how to handle all these guys who are going to be interested. And the good news is they are interested, and it's exciting to see. Yama, I want to get you. We'll get more from
good problems.
Yeah, great problems, Sam. Yama, I want to get your thoughts on the visitors that came this weekend, and then we'll let Christian kind of close it out with some more comments about this weekend. But the guys that you like on film, I don't know if you've watched all of them. I've only watched probably about 2/3 of them. I didn't get through all of them last week, but I watched about 2/3 of them. But I want to get your thoughts, especially D-line. I mean, I don't remember a time when Notre Dame had that many elite D-linemen in on a visit at the same time. But go ahead.
Well, I think that's the thing that really stood out to me too, is that especially when you look at this class that they have right now that are committed, right? Studs, and obviously this is studs, but sometimes you wonder when they have a class like that, because Notre Dame has had some pretty good class. I don't, maybe not this good that they just had, but they've had years where it's like, remember when they got Tuitt and Lynch, and people thought, well, now that's the way it's going to be, and it wasn't like that. Like it was. Yeah, right. It was that was the thing. Now they thought it was going to be every year, and it was like not even close to that, right? And but I actually think that based on how Notre Dame, like the 27 and the 28 kids, so yeah, when I'm thinking of like the kids that based on like you're reading. I just want props to Chris and Matt too for intel. Was just fantastic this week too, right?
Really was.
But just when you're looking at like intel and you're looking at the guys that they're bringing in for at defensive line, those are the guys that like Jacobs is. The fact that they're even in the mix for a guy like that, where it's like they are seriously like have a chance, like. He is a special guy. Like that is a guy that is, when you think about guys that come in right away and like they could be somebody right away, that's one of those guys. And you can already see that he's not even close to playing college football yet. Right.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of level of guys that they've brought in. And I really just think that's kind of like what made it, if you're looking at kind of like, overall everything they've done, it's like that's what makes like the guys that they brought in really just like at a different level. It's just been like I don't even know what to kind of compare it to, because you're just not used to seeing that at Notre Dame, where you get those guys multiple visits, right? Where it's not just it's because you understand USC's a big game. They're going to bring in guys for this. It's like, well, that's this guy's third time on campus, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't really know, because I don't know that, like, I'm sure, Notre Dame fans, they're worrying about, BC rather than, hey, whether or not they can land a guy in 2028 or whatever. But people can actually start paying attention to some of these guys, because I think, one, they have a real shot at those guys. And some of those guys, like even just like Spell, yes, it is, all the kind of stuff that will be hard, because they're going to have obviously talented backfield. But like, I mean, he is exceptional. Like
I would pay him and be done with it. But you know what? I like Noah Roberts. I think he's a good player. You know what I mean?
He's a stud as well.
I'll take that dude right away. You know what I mean? I'll take that. That guy's a good player. And I just think it's crazy that they're, like you said, it's a lot of times Notre Dame would get a visit from guys like this, and then you'd never see them again. They just, they'd say nice things about Notre Dame, and then you'd never see them again. The fact that they're here, I mean, Whitehead, I think Whitehead's a really talented guy. He's a little raw. He's going to need some coaching, but great frame, great get off, goes after it. That's a big time player if you can land him, and he's been up here a bunch of times. And I mean, I'm just excited about where this is headed. Now, Chris, the one area I don't know much about is defensive backs at this point. I know that Ashes, when you look at the guys that they had, I know Ace is certainly a guy that they're interested in, but I just don't know enough about the 2027 guys right now. They had a good group of safeties and some corners in. Where are they with these? And do you think that these guys are the top players? And then my last comment is, it's great to have them now. And this used to drive me nuts, because Notre Dame would not bring them in for these official visits. They didn't make a big deal out of it. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Because at least you can figure out, whether you should be recruiting this kid or not, right? Whether you have a real chance. And forever, they just wouldn't bring them in. Whether they couldn't, or, they couldn't get them to show up was probably the biggest problem. But now you get all these guys in, and whether they're a good culture fit. Whether it's all about the money. Where it's all about, whether you get all these reactions that So you can kind of narrow your list down and say, okay, well, this guy's off, instead of waiting until junior day in January to figure this out. So I love that fact about it. But anyway, Chris, talk about the defensive backs.
Yeah, so one big cancellation was Xavier Hassan. He's a guy that's had Notre Dame very, very high on his list. Maybe they lead. He was going to come, but he had to cancel. North Carolina kid but has nothing to do with his recruitment. Notre Dame's still up there. If they're not the leaders or the co-leaders up there with some other top schools. Marquise Bryant, he came from Rollsville High School. That's an interesting high school. I've talked about it before in Intel. There was 3 guys. So himself, Marquise Bryant, safety, along with running back Amir Brown, and wide receiver A.J. Roberts. Notre Dame's got a shot at all 3 of those guys. I wouldn't be surprised if people at that school have been hinting they could get multiple of those guys. They think it's talk to your culture. They think it's a very similar culture there at their high school and at Notre Dame. Another guy worth mentioning is California safety Khalil Terry. He visited for the spring game back in April. At the time, he was committed to Michigan State, but we kind of knew he wasn't going to stick. But we hadn't really heard anything since. So when his name popped up on the visit list, I reached out to some guys I know on the West Coast, and they said Notre Dame is way up there. It's going to be Notre Dame or USC potentially for him, maybe North Carolina. So those guys that were there, then they had a couple other, California guys and Gavin Williams and Miles Baker. I'm not sure exactly where Notre Dame sits with those 2 right now. But getting those guys, especially from California, on campus for the USC game, winning the game, having a great atmosphere despite the weather, and like I said, getting in the locker room afterwards and seeing that culture really, really, really is going to impact. It's going to open their eyes, right? So if you were kind of in the middle of the pack with those guys, maybe you're now in the upper echelon. But the other guy to look at is Larry Moon, IMG Academy kid. He was at Irish Invasion not this past year, the year before. And another guy we just hadn't really heard a ton about. His name pops up on the visit list. I reach out to somebody close to him, and Notre Dame is definitely in the top 3. And that's an elite level kid too as well. So I don't know, in terms of, Hassan's up there, Marquise Bryant's up there, Larry Moon, Khalil Terry. I'm not saying any of those guys are going to pop right away. But Notre Dame's in the mix. And Mike, me and you were talking about it. It's kind of weird because they're so done with 26. Yeah, we have these big time recruits in, and it's like, but these guys are just juniors. You know what I mean? So we want them to commit. But usually we're thinking we got some high, a senior who hasn't committed yet. We're trying to land. These guys are still, for the most part, really early in their recruitments relative.
Yeah. And they're going to go visit games, and they'll hit a few junior days, and then we'll start to see, February, March, April. That's when the commits will start piling up, and we'll see. Yama, just like last year, I don't want to speak for you, but just like last year, when I watch the film of these guys, I'll see their national ranking, and I just kind of laugh. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's like, what are you watching? I don't understand what you're watching. But just like last year, a lot of people say, well, they didn't have necessarily the biggest offers, or they didn't. I think they did another great job of evaluation with this group. You're going to see a lot of these guys go right up the charts as far as their rankings go. I think they've evaluated this group very well, the 27s, I think, and I really like. I mean, there's just not many of the players that they've offered that I think they have a shot with, where I'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't take that guy. There's very few like that. And some of them are not ranked, very high, but I'm telling you, they've done a good job. Your thoughts here on that?
I think and I will say too, because that's always a question when you're transitioning from obviously Chad and everything that they were doing there. And it's not obviously Chad. Look at the players on the team right now. Most of these guys are guys that Chad recruited and played a part in evaluating. So he clearly did a good job at Notre Dame. But I do think whether it's just the natural progression of where they are with the scouting department under Mike Martin, whatever, it does seem like everybody, then when you get everyone who if I just, because I don't put a grade out on everybody, but I'll watch briefly their huddle or something when those guys get an offer. And it really doesn't matter. Yeah, they're all, like you said, Mike, their offer list or where they're ranked. And a lot of guys aren't ranked at this point. And that's just part of the process anyways. But there's so many guys that you can just see. It's just so clearly obvious. Like,
Yeah.
man, this guy is something. And Mike, you obviously have been doing this much longer than me, but as long as I've been doing this, working for you doing this, as long as I've been like going to like, the opening with Chris and all that too, like I can think of like when they offered, obviously there's a certain level of guys that they were going after and you're like, oh, this guy's got a chance to be great. And then there's always guys that you're like, I don't really get this offer. But hey, maybe they saw stuff that we didn't see or whatever. And you just don't see that anymore. It's just not a thing anymore. And in fact, it always seems like Notre Dame is one of the teams that is, in terms of like, a team at their tier that they're at, they seem to be in on guys as early as anyone.
Yeah. The other thing too,
what
I
we
think
talked about, right? When Marcus got hired, we talked about, I still remember vividly talking, both of you guys, like Notre Dame has been right there. They're finishing second and third for these guys, and that doesn't do you any good, but at least you're in the race, and hopefully Marcus Freeman will be able to get them over the hump. And that's what we're seeing. You know what I mean? Like, and once you get over the hump and you start landing guys and you land them early, now you can really just, focus in on other top guys. It's pretty much exactly what we had hoped would happen when he was hired.
Yeah. And and there's a lot of my customers that have been with me 25 years. And so they know the process and what it was. Here's the difference from what I've seen. In years past, Notre Dame will have a list of about 40 offers that go out right away. They're the top guys in the country that they like and they have a shot at. And they may get 10 of those 40 come visit. And out of those 10 out of the 40, maybe 2 come back again. And the rest you never hear from again. Under Freeman, especially recently, these last 2 years, the guys they really want, they're coming back. They come once, they come twice, and they're committing. You know what I mean? They're committing. So in the past, it was always like, all right, here's the 40 guys you really want. We don't have a shot at those. What's the next tier? These are our realistic targets. That's not the case anymore. It's those first 40. A lot of times, those are the guys they have a legit shot at. And that's what makes it so exciting about the recruiting and way this is headed. And this is why I keep saying Notre Dame is going to be, I really believe this, they're going to be the envy of a lot of teams, when it comes to what they're building. Their culture is very, very strong. Their recruiting is getting better. They have good coaches on this staff that can develop players. Their messaging is much better than it's ever been as far as how to attract kids and hammer home the ideas that are attractive to kids at today's age and what's important to them and how to reach them. So they've just done a tremendous job in all of this, which has made it so much fun to kind of follow. So I can't wait to see where this is all headed and go from there. But, when it comes to recruiting, this is the best I can remember meeting the last kind of 3 years, last year or 2 years ago, or no, last year, this year, and this coming 27. When you talk about bodies and who you really targeted and really wanted, they're staying with those initial offers and landing a bunch of them. And we got to hope that continues in 27 and 28. And as long as Notre Dame continues to play like they did on Saturday, that's going to continue because it's going to open a lot of eyes from a lot of these people. And, I put on the board today, isn't it great to listen to the media today? I mean, it's just, Notre Dame surprised me, Notre Dame this, Notre Dame that. And they're starting to open a tremendous amount of eyes, and it's very encouraging to see. Well, guys, we got a week off. It's certainly going to be some stuff that I know Jamie will probably dive into some things, schematically and that type of stuff. We'll be heavily in recruiting and that type of thing. I'm sure the staff will go out on the road, but what a great time for Notre Dame to have a bye. They need to heal and they need to fine-tune things because now you can see that the defense is starting to understand and play like they're supposed to play. And, you can see that they're starting to buy in, and more importantly, they're starting to feel confident about what they're doing. They're starting to play like a confident team. You add that, plus when you look at how Notre Dame responded, offensive line, we know CJ Carr is going to play better than he did on Saturday. And you add that running game with CJ Carr, the emergence of what we're seeing at wide receiver. Now it's just a matter of how do we fix the kicking game? Because the kicking game has to get fixed. I don't know how you fix it, but it's got to get fixed. And then I think short yardage in red zone, that's what you got to focus on for offense. Defensively, I mean, Jamie, where would you like to see them take the next step?
I think you just kind of keep going with what they're doing, because I really just think there's been a lot of development there, especially like up front. I think has been significant. You've really seen like guys, take off, and I think like having guys like Boubacar, obviously, you knew he was going to be a good player, but you're seeing him hit like a different level, and take it up a level. But you're seeing that from a lot of guys. Like Elijah Hughes was not a guy that people had was going to be a dude for Notre Dame this year, and he looks like a player, not just like a good player for them this year. He looks like he's going to be a starter next year, and
oh yeah,
I think that those are like they absolutely need that, and I think there's like significant there's been significant development, so I think that's like been a big key.
No hold there, by the way.
That, but yeah,
no hold there.
What a joke! Only 5 yards for one of the most penalized teams in the country. But
exactly,
who knows?
Ridiculous.
But I think so I think it's a lot of it is about internal development, because I think what you said, Mike, is schematically, I think there's not a lot there that I'm thinking like. I think they've already kind of gone through a lot of like their major changes that they're going to do. And obviously Chris Ash has settled into kind of like, oh, this is like who we should be, and this is how I got to call it, and all that kind of stuff. And you're seeing that difference, and it's made a difference. But I think even when you make a decision and to have Leonard Moore be on Mekhi Lemon in this game, and do that and obviously have it work out as well as it did, that's just the kind of thing that all the players, it's just buy-in. Like, not that they weren't maybe buying in, you didn't see the buy-in before, but when you see all of that and you see that, like, you see exactly how well that worked, and how like Mekhi Lemon might be a top 15 pick. And I know, like, I mean, Leonard Moore might be a top 5 pick, whatever, right? He's going to be pretty, he's getting, like, he's going to be picked off. He's going to be the first corner picked off the board in his year. But when you do that and you have that plan and it works, there's nothing like that as more that can convince a player to be like, okay, well, we're running this week. Okay, I'm buying. And that was not the case early on in the season. And I think the defense really has a chance to, like, they're not going to play a better offense than that team the whole year. And like, I know the Pitt kid, that, the freshman, he's played really, really well for them. Obviously, when they just beat Florida State on the road and all that, that was a big win, right? I think where before you might have thought he doesn't, and I think when he gets a chance to play Notre Dame, I think that's going to be a game where they're going to have a really tough time.
Syracuse harassed the heck out of him. Did you watch that? Syracuse harassed.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
they really did. Yeah. So I just don't think their O-line's as good as it. Yeah. And I felt better watching Syracuse get after him. Yeah, I just did. But sorry to interrupt, Jimmy.
And I just think with the defensive line kind of like, really kind of taking off a bit. I just see the defense just like that's really the key, because obviously this game, none of it happens if they're not winning up front, and they just won up front so consistently. And I just think that you're just going to continue to see that. And that's why they can really like keep jumping up a level.
Last question for you both. Is this the most fun you've had covering Notre Dame football these last few years?
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't even know what would be close. I mean, I guess maybe when there was a moment there when Charlie you thought Charlie would get it going, but I guess the best way to answer that is I was talking to a parent this week leading up to the visits, and we somehow started talking about Penn State, and he said, let's be honest, James Franklin reminds me of Brian Kelly, and I mean that in all the most terrible ways.
Oh my God. It's so true. It's so true too.
Oh,
like
that's just unbelievable. And that's like I said, it's just fun to have a coach that you just really want to get behind, and you just really want this guy to succeed because he does everything the right way, and what he stands for and what he believes in. It's not BS. I mean, that's who he is as a person, and he's a good person, and that makes it much more fun for Irish fans to cheer for. So, all right, folks, that's going to be it. We went a little over, but we knew we had some recruiting stuff here, and we didn't really get heavily into the game. I know Jamie will have some breakdowns of what he saw, the good in the game and some of the bad as well. And we got a whole lot of hit and hustle this week as well. So thanks for listening and watching the show. We greatly appreciate it, and we will talk to you next week on Power Hour.